Hey friends, so I saw the master healer again, the osteopath, who worked on my wrist again. It is completely transformed from the first time that I saw him, which is good news. I'm very grateful. If you've missed some of my posts where I talked about this process of healing and sort of like what it felt like when it happened and the various phases of my understanding of what it is actually communicating to me, that you can search my last 6 weeks worth of posts to kind of find out more about that. But 8 weeks, I guess it happened almost exactly 2 months ago, beginning of July. But today, when he worked on it, one of the things he said, which I could sort of feel, was it's moving a lot more. There's movement in the joint. There's real kind of activation of the capsule, the joint capsules kind of reinvigorating. And talk about a relief to feel movement in this area that has felt so constricted and that affects my daily practice as a pianist so much. It was big. And another thing that has become apparent to me, which I mentioned to him, which he immediately was like, yes, that's definitely true, is that the condition of my wrist, the tightness, the kind of like, some of the bones were essentially frozen in place. They were really immovable. And for the first 2 times that I was treated, it felt like he was putting pressure on bones that just, like that feeling of like when something's out of place and it's like dying to pop into place. That feeling was super intense. And the first time I could tell it was like he was pushing on something and it was like it wouldn't go. And I was like, oh, please just make it go. But he was like, I can't do it with force. I've got to wait for the tissues and the bones to be ready. The second time he treated it, it moved. And it was this massive release. And subsequently, it's interesting because I felt in the subsequent days, I felt more kind of emotional surges than I felt in a long time. And I definitely did some posts about it. I felt like there was a kind of emotional energy coming through that was familiar, but like really, really old. And I had not associated it with the release of a kind of inhibition, a restriction in my body that has been there for a long, long time. But when I said to Andrew today, I said, I don't think that this injury, I don't think the condition of my wrist came from this injury. I think it has been locked up. I think it's either an old injury that I sustained or a series of injuries, or over time I just built up a level of constriction there that has come to feel normal, And then when I injured it playing tennis, it was like, well, now I have to pay attention to it. Now I can't ignore this anymore. And I thought that the injury was strictly from the thing that I'd done, from the kind of, from the wrenching around of my wrist that I did playing tennis. But the more I've sat with it, the more I've felt into it over the last week or two since my previous treatment, I was realizing, oh, no. This is not just from that injury. That injury is almost like happening in parallel to this. Might even be partly due to the fact that there was so much restriction in there before. But that injury did not cause the condition in there. That condition is old and it's starting to move now, but a completely it's a completely different level of thing that I'm dealing with than just, oh, I sprained my wrist and it needs to heal. And when I said that to Andrew, he completely agreed, and I was, I was like, okay, that's starting to make sense to me, because I started to put together the pieces of like how it actually felt for it to move, and then the kind of like repercussions, psychological, emotional repercussions that I had not attributed to it, but that with a little bit of retrospect, I'm able to see, oh yeah, that's what was going on. You get a release in the body. It's always how it happens. You get a release in the body, then you get a release in your emotions or your psyche, and they don't always happen at the same moment. They're not. You don't always feel like they're associated. They're not always. They're not. And a lot of times the emotional thing will feel like it's about something completely different, because as we know, when we have a surge of emotion, especially like an old pent up emotion, a lot of times it's not a real positive. A lot of times it's like the pent up stuff is kind of like frustration, anger. So when that comes through, and it's just like kind of occurring in our system, it's got to hook onto something, unless we're like super conscious and we can be like, there's emotion here, I'm feeling this, and I don't project it onto any of the surfaces that are presenting themselves all around me. But by and large, if we're not so awake that we can just take full responsibility for the emotion as such, and not need to think that it's about something that's happening to us, then that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to find something in the environment, find someone here who's nearby, works well if it's a loved one, and associate that emotion or attribute it to them. And it's only kind of with enough distance now that I'm seeing, oh, that's what was happening. Or, and maybe it doesn't have to go to another person. It can also just be self-directed. A lot of what I was feeling a week and a half ago was like an intense kind of self-critical feeling that is familiar, but that I was like, man, didn't I outgrow this? Like, what? Am I back here? Like, am I doing this again? What's going on? And now that I've kind of put some pieces together with this injury, and I felt it evolving, and realized that it was old, didn't just sort of take the simple explanation that it was just something that had happened recently. With that kind of awareness, I've been able to see, oh, that's what's happening here. This is a healing. It's a larger healing process than just my wrist. Way more going on, and it's given me access to some of the things that that are embedded frustrations in me, and that I think I've been talking about releasing, and talking about and really sort of leaning into, going, I want to let this go. I want to feel this. I don't want to keep fighting this. I want to let whatever is here in. Nothing like an injury to let that stuff in. And then nothing like healing to let it out. To let it express itself and move on, so that we don't have to hold on to it anymore. Today, when he was working on it, it really was moving. And he, even at the end of the session, he was like, yeah, it's pretty free now. I was like, really? Because he'd just gone like moved it in a million different directions. All I felt was popping and cracking and little twingy releases. And he was like, oh yeah, it's really free. And I was like, well, okay. It's freer. But it may be freer now than it's been in 15 years, in 20 years, who knows? And I realized, there were some things as I was practicing piano leading up to the time to the period when this injury happened. I was doing a lot of deep work, a lot of intense work at the keyboard. And I kept feeling like there's something in the way. There's something blocking my expression here. And it was almost like invisible. I couldn't tell. I could just tell there's like a discomfort in my mechanism in the hand, specifically the right hand, that seemed to make things hard that didn't need to be hard. And this is why piano is such a fantastic mirror for our entire being. I wouldn't have known to look at my wrist. I did actually know that there was some tension in there, and I felt like I kept thinking, like, sort of towards the base of the thumb here, there's something that wants to release. But I didn't know how pronounced it was, or how kind of completely locked it was. My guess is that if I'd gone to Andrew at that point and said, hey, can you take a look at my wrist? He would have said, wow, that's super locked up. He would have said the same thing, essentially, that he said when I went this time. It's just that I needed an injury to get me in the door. I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to go seek, I wouldn't have sought that out. I wouldn't have known to seek that out if I hadn't injured my wrist. So, it's like another turn of the screw, another revolution, another level of understanding of what's actually going on here. But it is exciting to feel the movement. It's exciting for him to have said it's really moving now, because it really did feel completely different. Like what he was able to get as far as movement today was completely different than anything I've felt. And yeah, so I'm excited to see where that goes. And now that I know what I'm in for here, it's like, okay, let me pay attention also to what comes up emotionally. Because probably tomorrow or the next day, something might come up that I'm like, that's intense. And like, what I do with that, hopefully I can stay conscious. Hopefully I can stay present, conscious, and not project it, not need to make it about somebody else or something else, or even something else in me. A lot of times we project things inwardly. It's actually possible to take something projected onto our past or our mistakes we feel like we've made, right? We can project a feeling we're having now onto shit we've done in the past that may or may, it's kind of, all it has to do is kind of fit the bill. It doesn't have to really be the thing that is causing this. It just has to be close enough that we can hook some emotion on it and be like, that's what's to blame. So hopefully I can not do that. Hopefully I can kind of be present, and that's what I'm going for over the next week or so, 10 days till I see Andrew again. But letting myself feel the release and the joy of being free in a new way, and just being ready for whatever comes up as a result of that. So it's exciting. And thank you for listening, if you're still watching. It's such a detailed account of what's going on physically and emotionally. I think it's, this is a template. The way this works is a template for anybody's experience, not unique to me at all. I just happen to be in a kind of intense phase of it. So appreciate you. Thanks for watching.